wait a few minutes until all participants are logging on.
Hi, I've now I've forwarded you an email from,
Tom, you're not on mute.
I just want to let you know I sent you the, huh? Oh,
Just a few more moments until all participants are logged on. We have just a couple hundred more in the waiting room. I think we can go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for joining. We apologize for the delay. Superintendent Horn, we are ready to get started.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. There's only 25 people left to sign on, so just give it a second, maybe. Okay. Hi, thank you for joining us this afternoon. As you know, when the governor or the attorney general or Save Our Schools or anyone else attacks SEAs, the media come to me for response and counterattack. I'm the only statewide official who actively advocates for the value of SEAs and explains the reasons. As a policy matter, I do not believe that parents should have to tie supplementary materials to curriculum. And it was my department who drafted the handbook that the state board adopted that did not do so. In addition, I want to make the point that I do not hesitate to take on the Attorney General when I have reasonable assurance of succeeding in the long run. I took her on over such issues as keeping boys out of girls' sports and making sure that Spanish-speaking students are taught English. I believe I have taken on an Attorney General more than any superintendent in history by far. When I received the Attorney General's message, I sent it to the most knowledgeable people in my department. I asked them to look at it not as an advocate, because we all disagree with the Attorney General, but in a neutral way, as though they were judges to determine if they could give me a reasonable assurance of success. They analyzed the statutes on which the Attorney General relied and indicated to me that as a neutral judge, they would rule against me. If I made a fight out of refusing to comply and lost it, that would be much more damaging. At the same time, I've had conversations with the Goldwater Institute about their suing the Attorney General about this. I told them I would support them and be a witness for them if they choose to do that. A court decision, which I am now appealing, held that the Department of Education does not have standing to file lawsuits itself. In addition, I had initially indicated I would ask the State Board to revise the handbook in accordance with the Attorney General's interpretation. After talking with the Goldwater Institute, I sent the Attorney General an email stating that I was reconsidering that, and if the Attorney General wanted a change in the handbook, the Attorney General could ask the State Board. I would not do so. In the meantime, I believe the best way to fight government overreach is to make the task as reasonable as possible. There are curriculum experts who could make this complicated. I chose not to do so. I've sent out an example which indicates all that is needed to identify what part of the curriculum the supplemental materials are needed for that part of the curriculum. If the curriculum does not have an appropriate spot for that, all that is required is to supplement the curriculum to which to tie the supplemental materials. I will now hand the matter over to John Ward, who administers our ESA program.
Recording in progress.
To answer your specific questions. Thank you again for joining us.
John, if you can unmute yourself.
Rookie error. My apologies, folks. Superintendent Horn, thank you for your comments and thank you for your strong support of the ESA program and the ESA community. As an ESA parent myself and as the director of the ESA program, I know how much it means to this community. Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who may not know me, I'm John Ward, the executive director of the ESA program. In addition to Superintendent Horn, we're joined this afternoon by Art Harding, who is the Chief Operations Officer here at the Department of Ed. We are also joined by Maria Sims, who is the Associate Superintendent of Legal Services here. And we are also joined by Christine Sparcia, who will be assisting us this afternoon with the call and all of the questions and answers. So I wanted to start off by thanking all of the 375 parents who submitted questions to us to review. We got well over 800 unique questions that were submitted to us. So we went through all of those very carefully and we boiled them down to a group of approximately 20 questions that really kind of capture a cross-section of all the questions that were asked, because most of the questions were somewhat repetitive. And so I think these 20 questions really do capture kind of what you all would like to know and what we think is really helpful for you all to know as we implement some of these new changes. For today's Q&A, it'll work by Christine reading the questions that you all have submitted, and then I will go ahead and answer those questions for all of you. And while the question is being asked, it will also be on a shared screen so that you all can see very clearly what we're asking. So we really hope that this Q&A session is incredibly helpful for you. There still may be questions afterwards. Of course, the ESA program is always available to answer your questions the best we can, but we really think that this will be very helpful to all of you. And I do want to just reemphasize that this town hall today will only focus on the question of curriculum and supplementary materials. I know there are a host of other questions that you all may have regarding ESA in general, but this town hall will only focus on this topic. So Christine, if we can, why don't we put up the first slide?
Perfect. Can you see my screen?
I cannot. I don't see a slide. There we go.
Oh, let me try that again.
So the first two slides that we will start with are the statutory and state board rule definitions of the two most common terms that we will be using this entire town hall meeting. So obviously we're here today to discuss curriculum, and that is defined for ESA purposes in state law in ARS 15-2401, Section 2. And curriculum means a course of study for content areas or grade levels, including any supplemental materials required or recommended by the curriculum, approved by the department. Now, state law doesn't define supplemental materials, but State Board of Education rule does. And so according to State Board Rule R7-2-1501, Section 16, it says supplemental materials means relevant materials directly related to the course of study for which they are being used that introduce content and instructional strategies or that enhance, complement, enrich, extend, or support the curriculum. So just having a good understanding of those two terms, I think will be very helpful as we run through the series of questions that we have. Christine, why don't we go ahead and start off with the first question?
Absolutely. So why is curriculum being required every time we need to replenish basic school supplies, pencils, paper, glue, scissors, etc.?
So as I just alluded to, there are specific categories in state law that ESA funds are allowed to be spent on. These categories include tuition at a qualified school, textbooks required by a qualified school, and curricula and supplementary materials, among other categories. With regard to supplementary materials, earlier this month, the Attorney General's office sent ADE a letter stating that the combination of state law and State Board of Education rule requires that all supplementary materials must be required or recommended by a curriculum. For that reason, currently all supplementary materials must be supported by a curriculum. As you know, previously there were some supplementary materials like pencils, paper, and crayons that were so common that a curriculum was not required. That is no longer the case. These items now do require a curriculum. In the next questions, we'll discuss curricula for these types of items because that's really what you all, I think, are here to understand.
How are we supposed to provide curriculum for general school supplies like paper, pencils, glue, crayons, etc., that were previously allowed without a curriculum?
So we understand that these types of educational supplies are very common and that it feels unnecessary to have to explain them. Nonetheless, they are classified as supplementary materials and must have a curriculum. We don't expect that you would write a curriculum just for the purpose of justifying paper and pencils and glue, etc. However, our suggestion is that as you are submitting curricula for other courses of study like art, math, science, English language arts, etc., that you attach these items to those curricula. It will not be hard to justify and demonstrate why you would need pencils and paper and glue for these subjects.
Does a curriculum that we've purchased from a vendor require us to submit another curriculum to support the off-the-shelf curriculum we purchased? In other words, does off-the-shelf curriculum require curriculum?
The short answer is no. So a curriculum does not need to be justified by another curriculum.
What if we home educate, have our own set curriculum, and we want to get supplemental materials for some of the courses we are teaching at home?
So if you are home educating your children and have a set curriculum, that's great. So all you now need to do is submit the curriculum that you already are using, submit that to us here in ADE for review when you're purchasing any supplemental materials that are required by that curriculum that you're using. So as long as there is a clear connection between the supplementary materials you are submitting and your curriculum, then you're set.
How do we order things like reading books as we did before?
So reading books that are not textbooks required by a qualified school are supplementary materials and do require a curriculum. For example, if you are teaching your kids to read and using books like Brown Bear, or the Icky Sticky Frog, or whatever books that you choose to use to teach your kids to read, submit a curriculum for learning to read that lists these and any other titles that you want to use for this purpose. Similarly, if you have an older student who loves reading and wants to read To Kill a Mockingbird or The Grapes of Wrath or whatever, submit those titles along with an English language arts curriculum, for example, that includes skills like reading fluency, context clues, symbolism, foreshadowing, or whatever it is that they may be learning as they're reading these types of books.
When purchasing reading books, do we need to list the title of each book on the curriculum or just put various books?
Yeah, so you must list each title on the curriculum. ESA staff must be able to see each title for the books that you are requesting on your curriculum.
Are the art supplies that I buy required to be supported by a curriculum?
Yes, art supplies are supplementary materials and must be required or recommended by curriculum. So if you are doing art or arts and crafts lessons with your students, document the project or craft that will be done and indicate what materials you'll need. ESA staff will review the specific supplementary materials and verify that those materials are related to the project or the craft that your student is doing.
Would an educational subscription box be considered a curriculum in and of itself, or is it considered a supplementary material? And if it is a supplementary material, what should we submit to ADE for curricula to support it?
Typically, an educational subscription box is going to be a supplementary material because it is not a course of study. Rather, it is part of a course of study and typically encompasses a lesson within a course of study. So whatever course of study your educational subscription box is supporting, submit the curriculum you're using for that subject or course of study that encompasses the lesson or concepts covered by that subscription box. So that would allow ESA staff to review and approve the subscription box.
Please explain what ADE is looking for when reviewing and approving curricula.
Christine, can you share with everyone the template that we include on page 20 of the ESA Parent Handbook?
Yes, give me one
So
second.
while you're doing that, the State Board of Education has approved and adopted a curriculum template, which, as I just mentioned, is included on page 20 of the current ESA Parent Handbook. So if you're submitting parent prepared curriculum, you may use that State Board approved template, or you may use another curriculum format. Whatever you submit, it must include at least those elements included in the State Board adopted template. ESA staff will review your curricula to ensure they include those elements and that they can identify what these supplementary materials you are requesting are required for in the curricula. So Christine, thank you for sharing that. So currently what we have on page 20 in the ESA Parent Handbook looks almost like this, except for the portion that you see in red. So as most of you will recall, we sent out an email last week just indicating that we were making some changes to the State Board approved curriculum template just to ensure that we are complying with this requirement. And so those changes are what is reflected in red there. So again, I think this is helpful for you all to use. This is what the State Board has said is acceptable to use for curricula. If, again, as I said a minute ago, if you want to use something different, you're free to do that as long as it at least has these elements in it.
Don, please let me know when.
Yep, okay.
Perfect. Are we able to add an addendum to a previously submitted curriculum as time progresses and other supplementary materials are needed?
So the answer is yes. You may add additional supplemental materials to a curriculum you have already submitted. We understand sometimes you forget to add a supplementary material, or later you realize your curriculum could benefit from materials you hadn't first considered. So you are always free to submit what you need, and ESA staff will review the additional supplemental materials. But please just ensure that it is supported by the curriculum that you resend to us.
If we are homeschooling with a purchased off-the-shelf space science curriculum and want to get, for example, a solar system puzzle to reinforce the spatial orientation of the planets, but it is not required or suggested in the curriculum, should we submit that space science curriculum along with an additional parent-created curriculum that explains how the puzzle reinforces the solar system discussed in Chapter 7 of the student textbook?
So if you are purchasing, excuse me. So if you're purchasing additional supplementary materials that are not required or recommended by your students' off-the-shelf curriculum, but the additional materials enhance, complement, enrich, extend, or support the curriculum, you may absolutely submit an additional parent-prepared curriculum supporting and justifying the additional items.
My child will be attending a private special needs school. Will we need to submit a curriculum to support the tuition that we pay the school?
No, paying for tuition at a qualified school does not require that you submit the school's curricula. Tuition at a qualified school is an allowable expense under state law and only requires a parent to submit an appropriate invoice for review and approval by the ESA staff.
Are tickets for educational experiences like visiting a zoo, museum, or attending a play supplemental material that require a curriculum?
Yes, the tickets for a student's admission to these educational venues are considered supplemental material and do require a curriculum. When your student is going to the zoo or a museum or a play, submit a simple curriculum that shows what they'll learn while they're there, and that'll satisfy our needs here in the ESA program.
Are families in private schools able to submit their children's class supply list instead of a curriculum?
So to obtain those items on a private school's supplies list, all you will need to do is submit the supplies list that shows it was issued by the school and is for your student's grade level, or you can submit a class syllabus showing all the supplies and textbooks that are required for the class.
Could ADE provide samples of approved curriculum for frequently purchased items such as Legos and school supplies?
So we know that every child has unique learning needs, and ADE's ESA program does not create ready-to-use curricula for ESA families to use. However, the ESA community is a collaborative community, so we encourage ESA parents to continue working together to share curricula that works and can be tailored to each student. There are many resources parents may use to create a curriculum for their student. Parents are empowered to use all resources available for each of their students' individual needs.
Do we need to submit a different curriculum for each supplemental material?
No. So multiple supplemental materials may be included in a single curriculum. There is no expectation that each individual supplemental material needs its own curriculum. So to be clear, the department is not requiring a different curriculum for each supplemental item.
By using the parent prepared curriculum template in the ESA parent handbook, will we need to pay out of pocket for supplemental materials and then submit for reimbursement?
No, the need to submit a curriculum for supplementary materials does not affect how you choose to purchase the supplementary items using your ESA funds. So whether you use the pay vendor option, the ClassWallet Marketplace, seek reimbursement, or use a ClassWallet issued debit card, none of that is affected by the need to submit a curriculum.
Can ADE share with account holders whether AI, such as ChatGPT, can be used to create curriculum?
The Department of Ed is not evaluating how you created your parent-prepared curricula. As stated earlier, there are a variety of resources for parents to use to create curricula, and we encourage you to use whichever resources work best for your student. If that includes using AI, that's your decision. ADE is concerned with evaluating whether the supplementary materials you requested are required by your curricula. We are not evaluating which sources you use to create that curricula. So that concludes the questions that we have prepared today to ask and to answer. We hope that you found this information very helpful. As I said earlier, if there continues to be other questions, please feel free to reach out to the ESA program. We're more than happy to help. Obviously, we know that sometimes when you call in, the wait times can be a little long. But again, I think that speaks to the popularity of this program. We have likely in the next 5 weeks or so about 80,000 students on the program. And so there's just a high volume of both purchases and calls coming through, but our team is doing a great job and the very best it can to get through all of that volume, whether it be your calls or your purchases. We appreciate your time and we hope you all have a good rest of your afternoon. Thank you.